I remember the ceiling first. Sterile white tiles above me, blurred edges, a faint tremor in the lights that pulsed in rhythm with the monitor beside my bed. My ears were ringing like distant artillery. There was a cold tube across my face, feeding me air in slow, careful breaths. My fingertips tingled as if my body did not trust itself to stay conscious. A nurse moved past with soft shoes and tired eyes, the kind of exhaustion that comes from witnessing pain you cannot absorb. She paused, glanced at my uniform jacket folded neatly on the chair next to me, saw the small army patch placed on top by the paramedics, and her expression shifted. Compassion replaced routine. It was the look people give soldiers when they realize service and suffering have collided. Another voice entered the haze, steady and precise. A doctor leaned close, his badge swinging slightly, and asked in a low tone what happened. My throat hurt when I answered. Family. The word tasted bitter and raw, a confession and a wound at the same time. The doctor hesitated as if expecting another word, one less personal and more explainable. When none came, he simply nodded, wrote something down, and left me in the slow hum of machines. A pair of military police stood by the doorway, posture straight, hands calm but alert, watching every detail in the room. Their presence meant something serious had happened, something that crossed from private pain into public violation. One of them looked at me with a mix of duty and quiet anger, the kind of anger reserved for betrayal. He asked gently if I remembered anything. I remembered flashes. The bright May sunlight outside the hall at the University of North Carolina. My sister Chloe in her crisp commissioning uniform, smiling like the world belonged to her. Camera shutters and applause. My parents beaming with pride. Then later, their faces twisting when my silence became defiance. The way my father grabbed my arm. My mother's voice slicing the air, accusing, disappointed, furious. You owe this family. You have always owed us. I remembered stumbling, the ground losing its balance, a hot ache behind my eyes, and then cold pavement kissing my cheek. Someone shouting, someone gasping, someone calling for help. I tried to lift my arm to rub the pain at my temple, but a dull pressure stopped me. My wrist was wrapped. My shoulder ached. I was breathing, but every inhale felt like glass. The nurse returned and adjusted the IV. She whispered, "No one deserves this, especially not someone who served." Her words floated like a blanket across my chest. People do not expect those who defend a nation to be wounded by the people meant to love them. A paramedic appeared at the doorway, still in his jacket. He walked carefully to my bedside and spoke quietly to the nurse, pointing at my dog tags resting on the tray. Then he leaned toward me. He looked young, maybe mid-20s, but his voice held something older, something respectful. She served. "Do not worry, soldier. We will take care of you now." His reassurance pressed against the ache in my ribs, offering shelter where my blood family had given nothing but storms. The room seemed to grow still. The beep of the monitor softened. The fluorescent buzz settled. I felt every second stretch into a lifetime. A military police officer approached. He introduced himself, but his name blurred. What anchored in my mind was the firmness in his tone when he said I was safe here. He explained they had been notified of an assault involving a service member and were opening an official report. He asked if I needed a legal representative or victim advocate. My eyes drifted toward the folded uniform on the chair. That uniform had carried me through deserts and drills, nights of doubt and mornings of strength. It had always protected me. And yet, the people who should have protected me first had instead pushed me to this bed. My breath trembled. A single tear ran slowly across my temple into my hairline. I whispered, "I did everything right. I served. I stayed loyal. I asked for nothing." The officer nodded once, as if those words were not just truth, but evidence. In the hallway, someone wheeled a cart past. The smell of antiseptic lingered. Somewhere a person coughed. Life continued while mine paused in this fragile moment between pain and resolution. I could still hear echoes of my mother's voice at the ceremony earlier. "Be quiet, Avery. Do not embarrass us." But silence had not protected them this time. It had broken open. It had cracked like a long, restrained fault line. Sometimes silence is not obedience. sometimes silence is a fuse, and mine had finally reached the flame. Have you ever stayed silent so long that your silence finally screamed for you? Tell me below. I grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina, where the air always smelled like salt water and summer storms, and where front porches were supposed to mean safety and kinship. Yet somehow mine always felt like a stage I never auditioned for. In our house, you could hear waves in the distance if you listened close enough, but you could also hear expectations cracking under the weight of silence. I was the eldest daughter, the quiet one, the reliable one, the one everyone praised for being low maintenance, as if stillness was a virtue rather than a survival tactic. My parents adored Chloe from the moment she arrived. I still remember the hospital pictures my mother showed every guest, how she glowed holding Chloe, as if she held the future itself. When visitors asked about me, she would say, "Avery has always been easy, never a problem child," meaning I learned early not to need anything. At school, I sat in the second row, always ready, always prepared, always invisible enough not to bother anyone. Teachers loved my neat handwriting, my punctuality, my ability to do group projects alone while others goofed off, but no one asked if I enjoyed it. They just called me mature. At home, it was even quieter. Chloe's laughter filled the living room, her medals from swim team decorated entire walls, her voice carried like sunlight through the house. Mine felt like dust on bookshelves noticed only when needed. I cooked meals by 12, did laundry by 13, learned how to stretch a dollar by 14, and memorized every grocery sale so we could look like a family that had everything, even when we were scraping through pride more than money. When friends asked why I never came to sleepovers, I said I had chores. When they asked why I worked weekends bussing tables at a seafood place by the river, I told them I liked having my own money. The truth was simpler and heavier. I was the family's insurance plan, the silent safety net the one always told family comes first, even if it means you come last. Chloe had ballet lessons, private tutors, extracurriculars that glittered on college applications. I had responsibility, reliability, the constant reminder that my success was not for me, but for the family. Every time I thought about joining student council or trying out for track, I heard my mother's voice, "We sacrificed everything for you and my father," adding, "Do not waste it." It meant, do not dream outside our script. It meant be useful, but do not shine brighter than the chosen child. When high school counselors suggested college recommendations, my parents smiled politely, then reminded me at home that scholarships were for Chloe. "She has potential," they would say, as if I was made of recycled ambition. I cleaned her room, did her homework. When she complained it was too much, drove her to practice once I got my license. Using a car my parents made me pay insurance for while they proudly announced Chloe deserved to focus on her future. I learned to swallow pride like medicine, bitter but necessary. I learned that silence can be armor. Yet inside I carried a longing I never said aloud. I wanted a life measured by my own choices, not by duty dressed as family loyalty. The first time I mentioned applying for ROTC in my junior year, my mother's fork froze mid-air. Military. She blinked like I had spoken a foreign language. My father lowered his newspaper and stared long enough to make the room colder. "Absolutely not," he said. "We did not raise you for that." It was not concern. It was control. Their plan was simple. Chloe would attend a top school. I would stay close help, care for family responsibilities, work steady, and stay quiet. When I said the Army could pay for school and let me stand on my own, they called it rebellious, foolish, dangerous. My mother cried as if I had chosen abandonment. My father spoke like a disappointed coach. "What do you think you are running from?" I did not know how to answer then because the truth was a fog around my heart. I was not running from anything. I was running toward someone I had never met, yet the version of myself who belonged to myself. They told relatives I had a phase. They told neighbors I was confused. They told me without saying it that freedom was betrayal. So when senior year ended and I signed my enlistment contract, I did it alone in a quiet room at the recruiting station while a flag hung behind me and my palms shook not from fear but from release. My parents did not attend my oath ceremony. Chloe had a swim meet and they could not miss it. My father hugged her that morning and told her, "Make us proud." To me, he only said, "Do not embarrass us." I left for Fort Jackson at 19 with one suitcase and a spine made of hope more than strength. I stood among strangers in boots too heavy for my ankles and repeated words of service and loyalty, feeling like I finally belonged somewhere, even if I had not earned it yet. On family weekend, I sat alone while others hugged parents who cried into their uniforms. I received a text that said, "Do not expect us to drive up gas is expensive." Then another message for Chloe about her weekend plans, accompanied by hearts and exclamation points and pictures of her at brunch. I did not cry. Soldiers learn quickly tears are a luxury. Instead, I folded the absence into discipline. I learned to polish boots until they reflected lights like water. I learned cadence songs under humid Carolina skies. I learned to carry weight without complaint. Drill sergeants yelled. My muscles burned. Blisters formed and healed. I found a voice when calling cadence that surprised me, steady, sharp, alive. I wrote home letters that sometimes went unanswered for months. When they did reply, my parents asked when I would come back to help with the house and reminded me that Chloe needed focus for college applications. I worked through holidays, missed birthdays, listened to fireworks from barracks while my family posted beach pictures. They always seemed complete without me. Yet the Army did something my childhood never allowed. It rewarded effort and resilience. It noticed when you pushed harder. It recognized potential. I was promoted. I earned respect. I became someone who could lead and protect. With every rank, I felt myself pulling further from the person they expected me to be. And each time I came home on leave, they treated me like a visitor, not a daughter, unless they needed something fixed, paid, or handled. You should be grateful, my mother would say, as if gratitude meant obedience. My father reminded me that family comes before selfish dreams. But the uniform had already rewired my spine. I knew my worth. I knew sacrifice and loyalty in their purest forms, not the kind twisted by guilt. When Chloe announced she wanted to become an officer, my parents celebrated like royalty crowning an heir. They boasted about her leadership potential and her bright future. No one mentioned that I had been wearing rank for years. They told people Chloe followed in our footsteps, not mine. Ours meaning theirs. I realized then that in their eyes my service was not pride, it was utility. A role. A resource, not a life of my own. That realization sat inside me like a quiet storm, gathering strength year after year until the day it finally broke. When I first stepped off the bus at Fort Jackson at 19, the air tasted like cut grass and nervous sweat, and something inside me whispered that this was the first place I had ever stood without someone else's shadow over me. The drill sergeants shouted commands like thunder on a steel roof, and boots slammed the pavement in a rhythm that sounded like belonging. I did not flinch. I had spent years learning how to survive silence and expectation at home. Here, I only needed to learn discipline and endurance, and the difference felt like oxygen. Training was not easy. My arms shook the first time I held a plank past. A minute my legs trembled during long road marches, and my lungs fought through humid Carolina mornings. But every time my body wanted to quit, something deeper inside steadied me. I had left Wilmington to become someone I could recognize, and each day at Fort Jackson carved away the parts of me that had been trained to serve without being seen. The first time I called cadence, my voice surprised me. It stretched forward, strong, confident, resonant, like it had been waiting for permission. Recruits around me fell into step not because they knew me, but because they trusted the voice. That moment rooted itself in me. Some people discover courage in battle. I found mine on a dusty training path with sweat rolling down my back and gravel in my boots. Mail call was harder. Recruits gathered hoping for words from home stickers on envelopes, voice memos from parents saying they were proud. I watched as names were called and envelopes passed. When mine did not come, the drill sergeant looked down the list and called out, "Grant, no mail." The first time it stung. The fifth time, my chest learned to stay still. On family weekend, others ran into open arms laughter, echoing under tall pines. I sat alone on a bench polishing my boots while families celebrated nearby. A stranger's toddler waddled toward me and giggled at my laces. Her mom apologized, but I only smiled. It was the most warmth I had felt in weeks, and it did not even belong to me. Yet I did not break. When graduation came, I stood taller, wore my uniform like a promise, and walked proudly across the field. My family did not show. Chloe had another event. My parents sent a short text, "Good job," no punctuation, no question about how I felt. But the Army celebrated me, and that mattered. My first duty station brought dust heat and discipline in equal measure. I learned resilience the way you learn to breathe, not by choice, but by necessity. While others called home with updates, I called home to silence ring after ring, until eventually I stopped dialing. Holidays felt strange at first. Fireworks crackled over base housing while I sat with people I had known only weeks yet trusted more than anyone before. We shared stories, cleaned weapons, swapped memories of places we had left behind. For the first time, I belonged not because I was useful, but because I endured alongside them. Deployment orders came in 2021, sending me to Kuwait. The air there was a different kind of heat, dry and fierce, like it wanted to test you. Sand coated everything, even morning coffee. I worked long shifts and learned the patience of structure, the meaning of teamwork, the power of quiet leadership. I was never the loudest soldier, but I was the one others leaned on when the days stretched too long or when someone whispered they missed home but could not bring themselves to call. I understood that ache. I carried it too. During deployment, I met Sergeant Maria Torres, a fighter in every sense, fierce but kind, sharp but generous. She ran faster than most men in our unit and could laugh even on the days when sandstorms made breathing feel like effort. We bonded over late chow lines and letters neither of us received. She held people accountable with a smile and helped me believe that loyalty could exist without conditions. She became the closest thing to family I had, and I learned that sisterhood does not need matching DNA. It only needs sincerity and sacrifice. The months overseas shaped me. Responsibility became instinct, confidence settled into my posture. When I earned my sergeant's stripes, my hands shook as I placed them on my uniform, not from fear, but from realization. I had built this life with sweat and grit and a heart that refused to quit. At 26, I pinned on staff sergeant rank, a milestone not many reach that quickly. My command called me Calm Steel. I held on to that phrase when doubt tried to whisper old lies in my ear. My parents sent no congratulations. Chloe posted pictures from a campus party that same week with a caption living my best life. While I signed re-enlistment papers, she signed party flyers. Yet when I scrolled through her photos late that night, I did not resent her. I only wished my achievements had ever been seen as more than a footnote. Around that time, I began planning long-term goals. Mentorship courses, perhaps a degree, eventually using the GI Bill I had earned through nights of missing sleep and months of heat and discipline. I researched options, talked to counselors, saved documents. Every decision I made was mine, and it tasted like freedom. I learned the policy clearly. The GI Bill could help service members continue their education or, in very specific circumstances, support dependents, but transferring it required service commitments, approvals, and responsibility. It was not a gift you handed over like loose change. It was earned. To even qualify, I had spent years away from holidays and family gatherings, learning how to be strong in unfamiliar places. My parents never asked about any of it. They only asked when I could visit to help fix the fence or cover a bill or drive Chloe somewhere. Sometimes I told myself maybe they did not know how to show pride, but deep down, I knew the truth. They celebrated Chloe's smallest achievements while mine were treated like errands someone had to do. Still, the Army filled spaces my family never touched. Leaders who noticed effort, soldiers who shared burdens, mentors who believed in growth. During one admin briefing, I met Captain Hale from Judge Advocate. Calm, measured, thoughtful. He spoke with clarity and authority, and when he learned I had handled a particularly tense barracks situation with fairness, he nodded approvingly and said, "You have a good sense for justice, Sergeant Grant." I held that compliment close. It meant more than all the hollow family phrases I had heard growing up. By the time I approached 28, I had built a reputation. I did not raise my voice to get respect. I earned it. Younger soldiers came to me seeking advice. I guided them through paperwork, through stress, through doubt. I was no longer the girl who lived unseen in Wilmington. I was a leader, a soldier, a woman who had fought for her place. And yet even with all that strength, there was still a quiet longing tucked inside me, a wish that one day my family might see me not as a duty or a tool, but as a person who had carved her own path. but longing does not rewrite truth. And some families do not celebrate your light unless it benefits them. I had learned to accept that. What I did not know yet was that my growth, my independence, and the benefit I earned through years of service would soon become the spark that revealed who they truly were. And it would not be subtle. May 17th, 2025 arrived with spring heat humming across North Carolina and a sky too blue to match the knot in my stomach. I drove from Fort Liberty to Chapel Hill in silence, boots, polished hair, tight uniform pressed with a precision that had become second nature. It should have been a proud day. Chloe was commissioning, a milestone, a moment families frame and hang on walls. I told myself I was going to show support, that this was a new chapter for all of us, maybe even a bridge back to connection. But memory and reality rarely agree. The night before the ceremony, my mother called. Her voice carried the tone I knew too well, polite on the surface, sharp underneath. "Do not wear your uniform tomorrow, Avery. You will overshadow her." The words sat in my chest like ice. I had earned every ribbon, every stripe through sweat heat deployments and years of showing up when no one else did. But in her mind, my uniform was a threat to Chloe's spotlight. I did not argue. I simply exhaled steady and replied, "I will be there." She did not thank me. She only said, "Remember, Chloe is the real officer in the family." I drove anyway. Hope can be stubborn even when experience warns otherwise. The ROTC commissioning hall buzzed with families smiling for photos, cadets adjusting dress shoes, parents handing tissues to grandmothers who dabbed pride from their eyes. Flags lined the stage, brass instruments tuned for the ceremonial fanfare. The air held that mix of tradition and anticipation that military ceremonies always bring. I walked inside in a simple navy dress instead of my uniform. My posture still carried the discipline of service, but without my stripes, I felt strangely exposed, like I had been asked to leave part of myself at the door. My parents spotted me and waved just enough to acknowledge my presence, but not enough to invite closeness. My father gave Chloe a once-over, adjusting her shoulder boards, straightening her cover the same way he never once touched my uniform during promotions. My mother fussed over Chloe's hair and uniform jacket, smoothing imaginary wrinkles, whispering compliments like prayers. When I approached, they both stepped slightly aside without meaning to, but the space formed anyway, subtle but unmistakable. "Avery, you made it," my mother said. Her tone suggested surprise rather than welcome. "Of course I did," I answered. Chloe glanced at me with a polite smile, the kind you give someone who is there but not part of the main frame. She looked sharp, crisp uniform officer gold, gleaming excitement radiating off her. I felt genuine pride for her. Whatever our family dynamic, hard work deserves recognition. She leaned in slightly and whispered, "I am joining the real army now." There was a playful tone, but inside it carried the arrogance my parents had nurtured in her. I nodded. "Congratulations. This is a big day." She looked past me to a group of cadets waving her over. "I might be stationed in D.C. or Texas or maybe even overseas. They really want strong leaders in my class." I held her gaze and simply said, "Good. You will learn a lot." She took it as a compliment. I meant it as truth. Leadership humbles everyone eventually. The ceremony began. Cadets marched across the stage in formation, voices shaking slightly as they took their oath. Hands raised, flags behind them. Pride filled the hall like a warm tide. I clapped for every one of them, knowing what awaited on the other side of that oath. Responsibility, weight, the kind of lessons textbooks cannot teach. As Chloe stepped forward, the room erupted in applause. My parents beamed, shoulders high, eyes shining. I clapped too, but quietly. Pride mixed with something heavier, a sense of watching a story being told, where I had once been expected to only hold the backdrop. When it ended, we moved to the reception hall. Round tables covered with navy linens, ROTC banners hanging trays of catered food steaming under silver lids. My parents chose a table near the front. I followed only to see my name card placed far end, one seat away from the exit. A detail too intentional to be accident. I sat anyway. I had survived harder environments than emotional distance. Relatives greeted my parents with excitement. They hugged. Chloe showered her with compliments, took pictures holding her officer cap. When they reached me, the tone changed. Polite, detached. A nod here, a quick smile there. One aunt asked, "So, when are you finishing school?" "Avery," I kept my tone steady. "I have been serving for nearly 9 years now. I am a staff sergeant." She blinked, surprised, as if somehow she had forgotten that detail despite every holiday card I ever sent. "Oh, yes, right, you enlisted." Before I could say more, my father stepped in with a tight smile and redirected attention back to Chloe. "We are so proud of our officer. She is going to do big things." Another relative asked what rank I was. My mother quickly answered, "She is enlisted," and then changed the subject to Chloe's potential duty assignments. The message was clear. I could exist in the room, but not take up space. Chloe talked loudly about joining the officer program, about leadership roles, about travel and prestige. She mentioned how some people join the Army to find themselves, but I am joining because I already know who I am. Pride swelled in her voice. My father laughed at her joke. My mother dabbed her eyes again. No one asked what I had learned through years of service. It struck me then how strange it was that a room celebrating leadership could ignore someone who had been living it. But I kept my posture straight and my breathing slow. Years in uniform had prepared me to hold my ground without raising my voice. A family friend leaned over to me at one point and said, "You should be proud. She is following in your footsteps." I smiled politely. "She is walking her own path," I replied. It was true, but the path I walked quietly paved parts of hers, and my parents would never admit it. As the reception wound down, I stood near a window watching cadets pose with their families outside. Pride in their posture, futures wide open. For a moment, I wondered what this day would have felt like if my family had ever celebrated me like that. Then I reminded myself I did not serve for applause. I served because I wanted to build a life with integrity. The day wore on in polite conversations and practiced smiles, but beneath the surface, tension coiled tighter with each passing moment. A storm forming quietly, the kind you can sense before you ever hear thunder. I had no idea yet how quickly it would break, or that it would not be Chloe's commissioning people remembered, but the moment I finally refused to be cast as the supporting character in my own life. After the reception emptied and the last of the cadets drifted off to celebrate with friends and family, my parents motioned for me to follow them to a small private conference room off the hallway. It was quiet inside, blinds half-drawn fluorescent lights, soft but cold. A long wooden table stretching between us like a neutral zone. The kind of room used for serious conversations and closed-door decisions. Chloe trailed in behind them, still glowing from the ceremony uniform, immaculate gold bars, gleaming posture lifted by pride and expectation. I sat across from them and placed my purse on the floor, hands folded calmly in my lap. Years in uniform taught me patience before pressure. My parents exchanged that familiar glance, the one that always came before they made an announcement disguised as a request. My mother clasped her hands together almost theatrically. "Avery, sweetheart, we wanted to talk to you about something important." My father leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice measured like he had practiced. "This is about your GI Bill." I felt the shift immediately. A slow drop in my chest, not fear, but recognition. Of course. The ceremony, the smiles, the polite congratulations. It was never about pride. It was about access. I sat a little straighter. "What about it?" My mother smiled the way someone smiles when they are certain you will agree. "Chloe deserves every opportunity to succeed. We all know she is destined to go far. She deserves a master's degree, and she should not have to worry about paying for it." My father nodded. "You have already had your chance. Your military career is established. Now it is time to support your sister's future." The words settled in the air like dust over old furniture. Familiar, suffocating. I kept my tone steady. The GI Bill is earned. Transferring it is not automatic. It requires additional service commitments, and it is meant to support dependents, not siblings. My father looked annoyed that I spoke in facts instead of emotion. This is not about rules. This is about family. My mother sighed heavily, a performance of disappointment. "We sacrificed everything for you, Avery. We raised you. You owe us." I felt heat under my collar, but not anger yet. Just clarity. I replied calmly. I earned it through service deployments, missed holidays, and years of work. It is not something I can just hand over like a gift. Chloe cut in for the first time, her voice sweet with entitlement. I mean, it is not like you even need it. You already have your career, but I need to get my master's to catch up in my field. Catch up? As if my years of service could be summarized that lightly. My father's voice hardened. That GI Bill belongs to this family, not you. My chest tightened, not from confusion, but from the ache of familiarity. The belief that anything I achieved belonged to them, simply because I survived their roof. I chose my words carefully, each one measured like an orderly assembling medical equipment. I can use it for my own education. That is the purpose. My mother waved her hand dismissively. Education? What do you still need to learn? You are enlisted. You work hard, but Chloe is an officer. She will elevate the family name. You can always take another job. That sentence landed like a slap, not physically, emotionally. The truth behind it exposed like bone. In their eyes, my service was utility. Chloe's career was legacy. I felt the sting, but responded with control. My job is service to this country. My education matters. My future matters. My father leaned back, arms crossed, a gesture meant to intimidate when logic fails. Stop being selfish. Do something for your family for once. For once. As if every year I worked every dollar I sent home, every holiday I spent in barracks while they traveled, every burner I scrubbed before deployment had never existed. My mother's voice rose sharper now, less sweet, more demanding. Chloe has goals. She is meant for great things. Do not hold her back because you are insecure. I blinked, slow and steady. Insecure. The irony was so sharp it nearly made me exhale in disbelief. I had worn rank-earned respect, carried soldiers through hardship, and they still saw me as the child meant to do chores quietly in the back of the house. I spoke slower now, like I was laying a cornerstone. I am not transferring my GI Bill. Silence hit the room like thunder without warning. My mother's face twisted in wounded shock. My father's jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. Chloe's mouth fell open slightly, as if no one had ever told her no before. My father hissed, "So you are just going to betray us like that?" Betray? That word echoed off the walls the same way it had when I enlisted at 19. To them, independence was betrayal. My mother pressed her palm to her chest dramatically. After everything we have done for you. Everything. I kept my breathing even. You did what parents are supposed to do. Provide. That does not mean you own my future. My mother's voice sharpened. Don't you dare talk to us like that. We could have let you fail. We gave you a home. We gave you food. We let you stay. The room felt smaller, like the walls had crept in. I spoke softly because power does not always need volume. I earned this benefit by serving. Not because you allowed me to breathe in your house. Chloe crossed her arms, annoyed the center of attention had shifted away from her. This is crazy. I should not have to fight my own sister for what is best for the family. My father slammed his palm lightly on the table, enough to send a jolt through the chairs. That GI Bill was always meant for the family. You are being ungrateful, selfish, and dramatic. My pulse beat steady, but my voice stayed calm. I am being independent. I stood slow, deliberate, like lifting weight from the ground. I am not discussing this anymore. The answer is no. My mother's voice cracked into anger. Sit down. We are not finished. I straightened my shoulders. I am. I gathered my purse and stepped away. It was then I realized something important. They were not asking me to help. They were demanding I surrender what I earned so they could continue a narrative where I served and they benefited. My father's voice chased me out of the room, cold and sharp. You will regret this, Avery. Family is everything. I paused at the doorway long enough to look back. No. Respect is everything. And you never gave me that. Then I walked out. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I did not explain myself again. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply refuse to give away pieces of yourself that no one ever bothered to value. And sometimes the most painful truth is realizing your family never wanted you to succeed. They only wanted you to serve. I walked out of that private room with my heartbeat steady and my steps measured, but the air behind me crackled like a live wire. My family followed voices, sharp feet fast, anger spilling into the hallway before I even reached the auditorium exit. I had barely made it 10 steps when my mother's voice sliced through the quiet corridor like a fire alarm. "Avery Grant, you come back here right now." I stopped not because she commanded it, but because a lifetime of conditioning still tugged at muscles I was teaching to obey only me. I turned, controlled breathing, shoulders square. Military composure, not daughter submission. They stormed toward me, Chloe clutching her new officer cap like it was a crown someone was trying to steal. My father's jaw was clenched, my mother's lipstick trembling around the edges from fury, and Chloe's eyes glimmered not with hurt, but with embarrassment. For her humiliation was worse than injustice. My mother pointed at me with the sharpness of a commander and the desperation of a parent whose authority had just shattered. "How dare you embarrass us on Chloe's day?" I answered calmly, each word placed like a stone. "I served. I earned this. And the answer is no." Silence hit like a grenade, the kind that does not make noise but takes the oxygen away. Chloe's face twisted first. She let out a shaky gasp and lowered her head like she was breaking shoulders, trembling. If I hadn't known her since childhood, I might have believed it, but I recognized the performance. When manipulation fails, she reaches for pity. My mother shrieked dramatic enough to draw glances from passing guests. "You are selfish. You are ungrateful. Everything we ever did for you, this is how you repay us." There it was again, debt disguised as love. Obligation wrapped in sacrifice. I stayed still, hands at my sides, voice level. "You did the bare minimum to raise a child. I did not ask to be born. I earned everything beyond that on my own." The moment the words left my mouth, I knew a line had been crossed that had been waiting my entire life. My father stepped forward, eyes dark with a kind of fury I had only seen once before when I enlisted. His voice was low, pressured, dangerous. "You think you're better than us now because you wear a uniform?" "No," I replied, "because I built a life without hurting anyone to do it." He shoved me, not hard enough to send me flying, just hard enough to send a message, hard enough that my heels slid against the polished floor and my shoulder hit the wall, hard enough that the quiet corridor suddenly had onlookers, hard enough that the past ripped open and the present stopped pretending. I caught myself after one stumble, but the shock hit me harder than the push. My hand went instinctively to the wall, steadying. Flash training. Ground. Breathe. Observe. Do not escalate unless necessary. My mother gasped as if I had attacked him, voice trembling with false horror. "Oh my God, Avery, what is wrong with you?" Somehow in their world, his violence became my fault instantly. Chloe rushed to my father like he needed comfort, like he was the victim, not me. "This is unbelievable. I cannot believe you would make Dad do that." "Make him." That word twisted inside me. That lie was older than my military career. I straightened slowly, spine tall. My voice came out low and steady. "You put your hands on me, and you will not do it again." My father stepped forward again as if trying to reclaim the power he felt slipping. The moment stretched his anger, my stance, the watching eyes. And then a voice from nearby broke the tension sharply. "Sir, I need you to step away." A man in a UNC blazer, likely event staff, had approached. A couple stared behind him. One woman pulled out her phone. Another whispered, "Is she in uniform? Did he shove her?" My mother spun, voice sharp like she could still control the narrative. "This is a family matter. Stay out of it." The staff member didn't back down. "This is a public campus event. If there's a problem, I can call security." My father snarled low and controlled. "This is none of your business." I lifted a hand slightly, signaling calm like I had done for soldiers under stress. "I am leaving." I said it quietly but firmly enough to slice through the rising chaos. I turned and walked breath-controlled steps measured. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice crack into hysteria. Get back here, Avery. You owe us an apology. You owe this family everything. Her voice echoed down the corridor loud enough that a passing cadet turned eyebrows lifting. I kept walking. I owed them nothing. Not anymore. The doors to the outside opened, warm air rushing over me, sunlight hitting my eyes. Campus green stretched ahead, students laughing in groups, life moving normally. My footsteps felt heavy and light, at the same time heavy with years, light with choice. I was halfway down the walkway when I heard fast steps behind me, then a hand grabbing my arm. Fingers dug into muscle. My father's voice hissed close to my ear. You are not walking out on this family. Not now. Not ever. I turned sharply. He did not expect resistance. His grip slipped and I stepped out of reach. Leave me, I said simply. This time it was not a request. It was an order. My mother appeared behind him, eyes wet, voice trembling. How could you do this to us? Avery, after everything, Chloe clung to her side, looking wounded and fragile, like she had been wronged by my refusal to sacrifice myself. My voice broke just slightly, but not from weakness, from truth, finally given air. I have spent my whole life giving so you could take. I am done. There was no crescendo, no scream, just a boundary. A lifetime late, but finally real. They stared at me, stunned that a wall they never thought would exist had suddenly risen. I turned again, walking toward the parking lot. Steps steady, vision clear. Behind me, I could hear their voices calling my name, then rising in panic, then anger again. But distance softened them until they dissolved into background noise. It was not triumph yet. It was not victory. It was simply the first breath of freedom I had taken without permission, and it tasted like the beginning of the end of their control. The spring heat hit me first, thick and heavy, as I walked toward the parking lot, heels tapping against pavement that suddenly felt too loud, too exposed. Cars shimmered under the sun. Students and families flowed around the sidewalks, still humming with celebration energy. I kept my eyes forward. Breath-slow hands steady at my sides, like I was moving through a field where composure was armor. Behind me, footsteps came fast, hard, purposeful. I didn't want to turn. I already knew. A hand clamped around my arm, fingers digging hard enough to bruise. I stopped only because physics demanded it. My father's voice broke through the noise, sharp and furious. You think you can just walk away from your family? The grip tightened, the kind of hold that is not meant to guide but to own. I pulled my arm back, voice level. Do not touch me. He yanked harder, dragging me back a half step, and the sudden force jolted my shoulder. You will not disrespect us like this. His face was red with anger, jaw clenched so hard it looked painful. The world felt suddenly small heat pressing down sound-sharpening edges. Before I could take another breath, my mother was there, clutch bag raised, her expression twisted in rage and betrayal. After all we've done for you! She screamed, and the bag came down hard against the side of my head. Not a gentle shove. Not an accident. A full swing driven by emotion, by entitlement, by a lifetime of believing she owned me. Pain exploded bright and hot along my temple, like someone had slammed glass against bone. My ears rang. Vision flickered. For a moment, the world blurred, then rushed back, too sharp. My knees wavered. I heard myself inhale wrong, shallow, like my body forgot how. Chloe's voice rose behind them, high and panicked, but not for me. Dad, stop! People are looking! People were looking. Heads turned, voices hushed. A car door slammed somewhere. A stroller wheel paused mid-roll. Sunlight pulsed too bright. My father leaned in, voice low and shaking. You will not shame this family. My body wanted to stand tall like muscle memory from the army, demanded posture, discipline, strength. But my legs trembled. The pavement tilted. The breath I tried to take caught halfway in my throat, like someone pressed a hand against my lungs. My vision narrowed into a tunnel. I felt the moment balance, then tip. My knees buckled, ground rushing toward me. I went down hard on one side. hands not fast enough to break the fall. My palms scraping rough concrete head, ringing so loud I thought for a second someone had set off an explosion beside me. I tried to push up, but the world spun once twice, then settled into a blurry swirl of colors and sound bleeding around the edges. A woman gasped. A man shouted, "Hey, stop!" My mother's voice cracked with false shock. "Avery, look what you made us do! Look what you made us!" Even through the spinning haze, the lie cut deep. "I didn't make you hurt me. You chose it." My mouth formed the sentence, but I don't know if sound came out. Someone else's voice broke in stronger, angry call 911. Footsteps hurried. A shadow hovered near me. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" I tried to answer, but the words stuck somewhere between thought and tongue. My head felt heavy like sand filled my skull. I blinked hard, focusing on the bright paint lines of the parking lot, the way sunlight glinted off nearby car windows, shapes bending in my vision. My father hissed, "Get up now! Get up!" My mother grabbed my shoulder, shaking me. "Stop embarrassing us!" Every touch felt distant, like I was underwater hearing voices through glass. Then a sharper voice cut through the fog, back away from her. Now, firm, commanding, cold authority. A young man kneeling beside me, his face tight with concern, phone pressed to his ear. I already called. "Stay with me, okay? Do you know where you are?" I swallowed throat thick. "Chapel Hill, graduation." My voice slurred but audible enough. "Good. Stay awake. Don't close your eyes." People started forming a loose circle, not close enough to crowd, but enough to witness. Enough to stop the performance my parents had built for decades. My mother whispered harshly, "We should go." My father muttered, "She'll get up, she's fine." But sirens approached fast, rising sharp and cutting through the warm air, and my parents froze like prey, hearing a hunter rustle the grass. A campus security officer arrived first, breathless, taking quick stock of the situation. "Did they do this to you?" he asked softly. I blinked. "Yes." The word scraped out thin but clear. My mother gasped dramatically. "That is not true. She is being dramatic." She slipped. The officer's jaw tightened. He didn't believe her. Then the ambulance rolled up, doors swung open, EMTs rushing out. They knelt beside me, voices calm, practiced. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" "Yes," I whispered. They eased me onto a stretcher, movements, steady hands professional and firm. The world steadied slightly as I lay back, oxygen mask pressed gently against my face. Cool air flowing in, replacing panic. One EMT leaned close, voice low, like a secret meant to protect. "She's military. Who would do this?" Another EMT stared at my parents, disgust plain in his eyes. My father sputtered, "This is a misunderstanding. We just need to talk to her." The EMT straightened, protective instinct clear, like steel under cloth. "Sir, stay back. She's in our care now." I exhaled. Relief and heartbreak tangled in my chest. My home never protected me. Strangers did. As they lifted the stretcher, my vision caught sky again, wide and blue but distant. The edges softened. The ambulance doors closed with a final sound, like a chapter sealing shut. As it pulled away, I saw campus shrinking through glass reflections of trees and brick buildings blurring like watercolor. My mother's shocked face fading behind distance. My father's fists still clenched, my sister's uniform gold bars catching sunlight like irony. A voice echoed in memory from training days. "You are never alone in uniform, but blood family can make you feel alone in ways no battlefield ever could." The siren carried me toward the ER, toward monitors and bright lights, and the familiar sting of betrayal. Toward the moment where silence finally broke and truth demanded to be seen. The scene mirrored the hook, a story looping back to where pain speaks louder than pride, where service meets abandonment, where strength is measured not in force, but in refusing to fall quietly. I did not know yet that this fall would become the rise I had been waiting for all my life. The hospital lights were bright, sterile white, cutting through the fog in my mind. Familiar beeping from monitors steadied the air around me. Cold metal of the bed railing under my fingertips, grounding me in a place I wished I hadn't returned to, but somehow always knew I would. ER nurses moved with practiced urgency, voices calm, even as they noted concussion signs, contusions along my temple, bruising on my arm where fingers had dug in. They did not ask if it hurt. They asked where. They did not comment on the way my breath shook at the edges. They adjusted oxygen flow and dimmed overhead lights just enough for my eyes to stay open without swimming. The doctor, mid-40s, calm eyes behind glasses, clicked his pen and spoke gently. "We are taking imaging to rule out anything serious. Your vitals are stable. Do you feel dizzy, nauseous, or confused?" I swallowed, voice thin. "A little dizzy. Head hurts." He nodded, scribbling notes. "That's expected. We will monitor closely. When we are done here, you will go nowhere without clearance. You are in good hands." He meant medically. He did not yet know the other storm forming. A nurse peeled back my sleeve to attach another line. She paused, eyes lingering on faint older marks I had forgotten existed. Bruises from ruck straps, rope burns from training courses. Hard work, not harm, but she saw only injury layered on injury. "You serve?" she asked quietly. "Yes, Staff Sergeant. Fort Liberty." Her expression changed, respect mixed with sadness. "No one deserves this. Not you. Not anyone." Those words landed heavier than the doctor's entire chart. For years, I had convinced myself pain was simply endurance. Now, someone named it wrong. Footsteps echoed outside the room, heavier than hospital shoes. Command boots. Military police entered 2 minutes later, uniforms, sharp expressions controlled but alert. One stepped to my bedside, the other positioned near the doorway as if guarding a perimeter. "Sergeant Grant," I nodded slow. "Ma'am, we received a report of an incident involving a service member. You are safe now. Can you confirm? Did your father put hands on you?" I exhaled, steadying my voice. "Yes." "And your mother? She struck you as well?" "Yes." My voice felt distant, like truth learned to walk for the first time. The MP exchanged a glance with his partner. "Roger that. CID has been notified. They are en route. We will take your statement once medical clears you." I blinked hard. CID, not campus police. Military criminal investigators. This was no longer a family disagreement. This was an assault case against a federal beneficiary of the United States Army. My mother always said family comes before everything. She forgot the Army has its own laws, its own protection, its own way of punishing those who threaten one of its own. The doctor returned holding a tablet. "Scans show a mild concussion. You will stay overnight. We are starting head injury protocol." As he pressed a cold pack to my temple, the curtain slid open again. Captain Hale stepped in. JAG, uniform, crisp posture, steady gaze, sharp but warm when it landed on me. "Sergeant Grant." His voice was quiet but firm, the way someone speaks when they intend to remain until the danger has passed. I felt the tension in my chest loosen just enough to breathe deeper. "Sir." He moved closer, not looming, not hovering, simply present. "We received word from the MPs. I am here to ensure your rights are protected. You are safe now." That sentence did something strange to me, made my throat tighten and my eyes sting, but not from weakness, from relief. The kind you do not realize you have been craving until someone hands it to you like truth. For the first time in my life, an authority figure stood on my side against my parents. Not because I begged for help, not because I proved I was worthy, but because I deserved it. The MPs briefed him quietly at the corner of the room. He listened without interrupting, jaw tightening only once when they described the scene witnesses reported. When he turned back to me, he spoke with the calm certainty of someone who knew the law and would wield it like armor. "They will not be allowed near you. A protective order will be filed immediately. CID will have questions. Answer truthfully. You have nothing to defend. You did not provoke this. You did not cause this." His voice was steel-wrapped in dignity, the kind only earned through years of seeing both justice and injustice. My voice cracked barely audible. "They said I owed them." He shook his head once. "You owe them nothing. You served your country. They harmed you. That is the end of the argument." A nurse returned holding a clipboard. "There's also something else," she said gently. "Campus security forwarded emails from your parents to the MPs after witnesses gave statements. They asked about your GI Bill." My heart tightened again. Not panic, just the grim recognition of a blade, long sharpened, finally striking air. Captain Hale took the documents, scanned them, jaw-setting. Financial coercion tied to physical harm. Attempted exploitation of a federal education benefit. He lifted his gaze to me. This isn't just assault. This is coercion connected to a federal entitlement you lawfully earned. They attempted to pressure you into transferring it. That puts this into a whole different legal category. His eyes softened only slightly. I know you served for reasons bigger than yourself. But service does not require sacrifice to people who would use it against you. I nodded slowly, tears forming not from sadness, not from pain, but from finally being seen. A nurse adjusted the blanket around me gentle, like she was protecting something fragile and fierce all at once. The doctor made a notation and spoke quietly. Rest. You are safe here. The room dimmed. Machines hummed steady. Voices softened into background. I could hear distant footsteps, muted hallway chatter, medical carts rolling. The world outside kept moving. But here in this room, something shifted. For the first time in my life, the system I had served stepped between me and the people who had always demanded I serve them instead. My hand rested against the cold rail. Breath steadier now. I was not alone. My story was no longer happening in shadows or behind closed doors. The truth had stepped into daylight, and it did not flinch. And neither would I. The Fort Liberty Family Readiness Center smelled like fresh coffee and paper packets, the familiar scent of military briefings and community support events. Rows of folding chairs filled the room, spouses and soldiers mingling the low hum of conversations, carrying stories of deployments, homecomings, stress, and survival. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a rhythm I had learned to find comfort in. They sounded like structure. They sounded like safety. I sat near the front, hands folded in my lap, uniform, pressed sharp as if each crease were stitched from the spine I had spent years forging. My head still ached faintly, a deep echo where pain had lived days before. The doctor cleared me. The command asked if I was sure I wanted to speak. I wasn't sure, but I was done being silent. Captain Hale sat beside me, clipboard in hand, presence solid and steady. MPs stood discreetly along the back wall. This wasn't a trial. It wasn't a briefing. It was truth stepping into light. When it was my turn to stand, my legs felt both strong and fragile, like a tree that had lived through storms but still remembered the wind. I walked to the front and faced the room. Faces turned toward me, young soldiers, seasoned spouses, a few retirees who still stood straighter than anyone in the room. My voice came out soft at first, trembling at the edges. My name is Staff Sergeant Avery Grant. I paused, steadying breath. I am here because sometimes the battles we face aren't overseas. They're in our homes. The room stilled. Conversations faded. I felt every eye focus not in judgment, but in attention. I served 9 years. I deployed. I earned my rank. I earned my benefits. I gave this country everything I had proudly, but when I said no to sacrificing myself again, when I refused to give up my GI Bill, my own family attacked me. My throat tightened, but I pushed forward. My voice did not rise. It didn't need to. They told me I owed them. They told me I was selfish for choosing my own future. They put their hands on me when I refused. The words hung heavy like sandbags on heartstrings. A woman in the second row pressed a tissue to her eyes. A young soldier glanced down, jaw tight. In military spaces, strength speaks softly. Pain isn't weakness. Survival is testimony. I looked at the room, breathing steady now. Serving my country was not betrayal. Betrayal was what they did to me. Before I could continue, the doors burst open. The sound slammed into the room like a breech, sharp, jarring wrong. My parents stormed in with Chloe, just steps behind them, still in her crisp officer uniform, like it gave her authority she had not yet earned. Chloe's voice broke first high and panicked. "Avery, stop telling lies!" My mother pointed at me, wild-eyed voice, shrill enough to cut air. "You think you can slander us after everything we've done for you?" Chairs shifted as heads turned. My father stormed down the aisle, finger jabbing the air. "You will retract every word right now. This family stands together. We will not be humiliated by your selfishness." His voice boomed. It echoed, but he didn't realize he was no longer in a house where silence protected him. He was in a military room, with witnesses, with command, with law. CID stepped forward immediately. "That's enough. Stand back." My mother lunged toward me like she could drag me back into silence through sheer will. "You ungrateful child, you ruined this family!" People gasped. A retired first sergeant muttered under his breath, low and furious. "I've seen combat, but this?" The family support coordinator tried to intervene, but Chloe raised her voice louder than all of them, tears dramatic, but not real. "She's doing this because she hates that I'm an officer." My father cut in, voice low and vibrating with rage. "Family loyalty is sacred. You do not turn on blood." CID raised a hand. "Actually assaulting a service member is a crime, and coercing federal entitlements is a federal violation." Then, like justice staging itself, one CID agent lifted a tablet and connected it to the room's projector. Security footage filled the screen, the parking lot, the shove, the clutch bag striking my head, my collapse. People audibly gasped. My mother's face drained of color. My father stepped back, suddenly aware of gravity. Chloe froze, breath catching in her throat. Then a second screen witness statement scrolling text messages, emails demanding I transfer my GI Bill, threatening disappointment if I didn't, guilting, commanding owning. And then a nurse's note. Patient assaulted by parents after refusing financial coercion. Silence fell like snowfall quiet, but heavy, covering everything. Someone in the back whispered, low and sharp, "Monster." I stood there breathing slow, chest rising steady, not shaking anymore. Commanders in the room exchanged glances. A spouse wiped a tear. An older veteran nodded once at me, jaw set with pride, his wife squeezing his hand. My mother broke the silence first, voice cracking not from pain, but from power draining out of her. "You destroyed us, Avery. Look what you did to your own family." And that's when it hit. All the years, all the guilt, all the obedience, all the nights I wondered if I was the problem, all the childhood swallowed so others could shine, all the sacrifice they claimed, all the sacrifice they erased. I straightened, eyes dry, voice even. "No, you destroyed yourselves. You just thought no one would ever see it." Something shifted. The room seemed to exhale. Then the applause began, not loud at first, not wild, but firm, steady rising like a flag raised at dawn. A sound of recognition, of solidarity, of truth finding witness. My mother reeled back as if struck by it. Chloe stared, stunned officer bars glinting like a mirror of arrogance suddenly cracked. My father clenched his fists, but there was nowhere for the anger to go. His authority meant nothing here. CID motioned them toward the exit. MPs followed. My parents sputtered half-formed protests. Chloe whispered, panicked, "This isn't fair." Fairness finally arrived today, I thought. They were escorted out the same way they had always escorted my worth out the door, without ceremony, without grace, without control. The applause softened. The room quieted. I stood breathing like I had just come up from underwater. Captain Hale put a hand behind my shoulder, not touching, just presence. "You handled this with dignity, Sergeant." My throat tightened. "Thank you, sir." A woman from the crowd spoke softly, voice carrying strength. "Some families break you. Some families are the army you build." I nodded and sat slowly as the room buzzed again. Not gossip, but support, quiet murmurs of respect. The truth was out, not screamed, not thrown, stated, proven, seen. I had not destroyed them. I had simply stopped carrying them. And when I put them down, they fell under their own weight. The battle that began in my childhood ended under fluorescent lights at Fort Liberty, where the Army, the place that taught me strength, finally witnessed the moment I stepped into it fully. Not as a daughter molded by obligation, but as a soldier shaped by truth. The days that followed felt like stepping into a life I had always been meant to live but hadn't been allowed to touch until now. Paperwork moved fast when the Army moved with you, not against you. Assault charges were filed formally. Coercion tied to a federal entitlement benefit made the case heavier, cleaner, undeniable. My parents sat across from CID agents twice before they understood this wasn't a family spat or a private disagreement they could smooth over with forced apologies and guilt-dipped nostalgia. It was law. It was consequence. They looked smaller each time I glimpsed them through glass on my way to give additional statements. My mother's hair-frizzed makeup cracked at the edges of her eyes. My father's shoulders hunched like gravity had finally found him. The rage was still there, but it was dull now like a blade used too long without care. Chloe's fall happened faster than hers. Officer candidate status revoked pending investigation. Sponsorship pulled. Her commanding officer called it lack of integrity. She called it a misunderstanding through tears when she cornered me in the parking lot outside the legal office. "Avery, please, this will ruin my life. You're destroying everything I worked for." My reply was quiet. "I did not do this to you. You chose who you wanted to be." For once, she didn't have a script to answer with. She left in silence, gold bars tucked in her pocket instead of her uniform, like hiding them would undo what she tried to take from me. A protective order came next. Signed and enforced. They could not come within 200 feet of me or contact me in any way. My mother tried once an email filled with emotional landmines. "We raised you. Families endure. You're humiliating us. Come home and fix this." I didn't answer. CID archived it as evidence. My command approved temporary relocation support. Trauma makes shadows in familiar streets, and they wanted me to rest without fear of running into ghosts in grocery store aisles or parking lots. They put me in on-post lodging first, then helped secure a quiet rental near Carver's Creek State Park. Pine trees, still water, trails I could breathe on. Silence, real silence, not the kind that demanded obedience. My company commander called me in on a Tuesday morning. The sun cut through blinds in thin golden stripes across his desk. He slid a folder toward me, voice steady. "Staff Sergeant Grant, this command recognizes your composure, integrity, and courage under significant personal duress." Inside was a commendation memo stamped and signed. For professionalism, for upholding Army values, for refusing to allow manipulation to corrupt what service meant. I traced the ink with my eyes, not touching the paper yet. Some victories require stillness to be felt. My commander added quietly, "We protect our own. You did everything right." That sentence, "you did everything right," hit harder than the clutch bag had. Because for the first time, someone in authority wasn't asking me to justify surviving. They were acknowledging it. Word spread through the installation faster than I expected. Military communities listen when silence breaks. The FRG leader stopped me outside the commissary, pressing my hand gently. "We're proud of you. My husband served. He would have stood with you too." A young private saluted me in the gym hallway, eyes bright. "You gave me courage to set boundaries with my family sergeant." "Thank you." A retired master sergeant and his wife brought a casserole to my door. Like grief and healing, both required warm food. "We heard what happened. We're here if you need anything." Even the chaplain sent a note, simple handwritten, offering support without prying or turning trauma into inspiration. It wasn't pity. It was respect. That's what felt different. My worth no longer needed to defend itself. It arrived first in every room I entered. On base, soldiers nodded with quiet solidarity. Some had their own versions of this story, silent battles behind locked doors and forced holiday smiles. They knew what it meant to pick yourself over the blood that cut you, and they honored it. Chloe withdrew from campus 6 weeks later. Couldn't bear the questions, the whispers, the consequences of believing she could build a life on entitlement instead of earned ground. My parents received their hearing date. Misdemeanor assault charges, attempted fraud tied to a federal benefit, mandatory counseling, probation terms pending. They called it excessive punishment in statements they filed through their lawyer. I called it reality finding them. My unit scheduled me for a resilience brief and follow-up medical checks. Not because they doubted my strength, but because strength deserves support too. One afternoon, sitting in a quiet corner of the Soldier Support Center, I read the commendation again. A line near the bottom stood out like it had been waiting. Staff Sergeant Grant demonstrated unmatched composure and commitment to Army values, protecting her dignity and her future despite personal cost. I thought about my childhood kitchen, my mother's voice saying family comes first, my father saying we sacrificed everything. I thought about the girl who learned to fold towels perfectly and hold in tears and clean up messes that weren't hers. The girl who enlisted because silence can be broken by purpose. Then I closed the folder slowly and whispered only to myself I came first this time. And the world didn't end. It reorganized. It became mine. The Army had been my escape. Now it was my fortress, too. A fortress built not from rank or stripes or salutes, but from truth told in bright light after years of being shaped in shadows. My parents once believed they owned my loyalty. But loyalty cannot be extracted. It can only be earned, and they never tried. When I walked out of the building that day, Fayetteville air warm against my face, pine sap scent drifting in the breeze, I felt the ground differently. Not heavy, not fearful. Solid. Mine. The consequences had been real, painful, public. But consequence is not cruelty. It is clarity. And sometimes losing people is not loss at all. It is liberation wearing another name. August arrived heavy with Carolina heat, the kind that settles on skin like memory. 3 months had passed since the day my world broke open in a public room with fluorescent lights and truth sharp enough to cut chains. 3 months since my parents' voices echoed accusations that lost power the moment facts stood taller. 3 months since Chloe's gold bars were taken from her hand and replaced with paperwork she never imagined holding. 3 months since I packed my things and moved into a quiet rental near Longleaf Pines where cicadas hummed like background prayers and peace finally sounded louder than guilt. In those months, I learned things about myself. That silence can be healing when it isn't forced. That you can sleep through the night once your dreams are not crowded by obligation. That a kitchen can stay clean because it's yours, not because you are trying to earn air in someone else's house. That the world keeps spinning even when the people who raised you stop being the axis. I still trained soldiers, still woke before dawn, still ironed my uniform with the ritual precision drilled into muscle and pride. I still checked in with medical, met with my CO once a week, and kept in touch with Captain Hale, who insisted that strength also means knowing when to accept support. I walked trails in the evenings, boots crunching pine needles, breathing steady. For the first time, my life was not a reaction. It was a choice. Then, one humid afternoon, the kind where cicadas sound like static and sunlight presses like weight, I approached the gate to post housing to drop off paperwork. An MP on duty nodded familiar face-calm posture. I nodded back. It should have been a quiet moment, but chaos always recognizes peace and tries to claw it back. A beat-up sedan pulled up beside the curb. Dust clung to every surface, paint-peeling tires bald. The doors opened and they stepped out. My parents. Their appearance shocked me less than their eyes. Not fury, not pride. Desperation is a violent kind of echo, and it clung to them like humidity. My mother's hair was limp makeup, smudged like she'd wiped tears or tried to paint herself into someone she used to be. My father's shoulders slumped, clothes wrinkled, anger hollowed into something brittle. And Chloe, hair tied back in a messy knot, no uniform, no polished posture, just a young woman whose arrogance had deflated into confusion and loss. They looked smaller, not physically, but in presence, the way people look when the world stops bending for them. My mother spotted me first, and her face crumpled. Avery. Her voice cracked like old wood. Please, we need your help. My father took a shaky breath, swallowed pride like broken glass. We're family. You can't turn your back on us. Chloe stepped forward, voice trembling, eyes pleading. I lost everything. My program, my future. We have nowhere to go. Do you understand? Her question wasn't meant to seek understanding. It was an accusation disguised as vulnerability. The MP beside me stiffened hand resting near the radio. He glanced at me, waiting. I stood still, breathing even. I had imagined this moment before, not out of spite, but out of truth-seeking, wondering what I would feel if they ever realized consequences follow people who treat others like resources instead of relationships. I didn't feel joy or revenge. I felt distance, clarity, peace they had never given me. My mother reached for me like habit, dragging her hand through humid air. Avery, this isn't right. We're your parents. You owe us comfort now. You owe us help. My voice came slow, steady roots and solid ground instead of trembling loyalty. I don't owe you a thing. My father's eyes flared, anger rising but weaker like a match with no oxygen. We raised you. You ungrateful. He stopped when he saw the MP step closer. It hit him then. The world where intimidation worked had ended. My mother's voice fractured. We're homeless. People talk about us. We lost everything because of you. A long exhale left my chest. Calm. Certain. Because of your actions. Not mine. I said no to being used. That was my crime in your eyes. Chloe's voice cracked desperate. Can't you forgive us? Helping us? That's what family does. Family. The word tasted different on her tongue than on mine. I straightened not with pride, but with self-recognition. Family doesn't harm you. Family doesn't take until you collapse. Family doesn't use your service as currency. Family stands with you, not on you. My mother reached again, weaker. We're blood. Blood should mean something. I held her gaze soft but steel beneath. Blood means nothing without love behind it. And I'm done bleeding for people who don't love me. The MP stepped forward. Ma'am, sir, you are not authorized to be here. You need to go. My father opened his mouth to protest, but the MP spoke firmly this time. Leave voluntarily or we escort. Choice, not force. That shocked them most. They had never understood boundaries. They only understood power. Now they had none. My mother's tears fell silent. My father lowered his gaze. Chloe's jaw trembled like she was swallowing stones. The MP signaled another soldier. Within seconds, my parents and Chloe were being walked back toward their car, not roughly, not loudly, just undeniably. They turned once more, faces a mix of disbelief and fear. They expected collapse, submission, guilt. But I stood tall in sunlight uniform, sharp, my life intact, my peace unbroken. They had used shame as currency, but shame only holds power if you believe you owe it. I didn't anymore. When their car rolled away, dust trailing behind the MP looked at me. You all right, Sergeant? I nodded. Yes, I'm all right. I meant it. Truly meant it. I walked toward my car feeling no tremor, no doubt, no pull backward. Only a quiet ache where family used to live. A space I no longer feared being empty, because emptiness can be filled with peace, with boundary, with self-respect, and sometimes with chosen family who show up not because they want something, but because standing beside you is who they are. As I drove away, pine trees lining the road like silent witnesses, I realized something profound. Surviving them was strength. Letting them leave was freedom. And refusing to let them back in, that was rebirth. The satisfaction wasn't vengeance, it was dignity. And dignity is a language the entitled can never speak. Moving into my apartment in Fayetteville felt like stepping into a world I had only imagined in the quiet corners of my mind during field exercises and late-night guard shifts. The place was small, sunlit quiet. Pale walls, clean floors. Windows that faced tall Carolina pines that swayed like they were breathing with me instead of against me. No voices echoing from other rooms. No footsteps waiting to judge or demand or take. Just space. Mine. The first night there, I stood in the middle of my living room with a single lamp casting a warm pool of light around me, and I did something I had not done in years. I exhaled without bracing for impact. Peace felt unfamiliar at first, almost suspicious, like something I shouldn't trust right away. But I let it settle in slowly, like stretching muscles that had forgotten softness. I built routines not centered around survival or service, but care. Morning runs through quiet neighborhoods where sprinklers whispered across lawns and the first sun cut through pine needles and gold beams. Gym sessions that weren't about passing Army standards, but about reclaiming strength because it belonged to me. Evenings where I cooked meals I had grown up watching but never got to savor because I was always rushing, always pleasing, always giving. Now I cooked slowly, letting garlic warm in pans, listening to jazz or soft piano, or sometimes just the hum of my fridge like a small, steady heartbeat. I tried silence often. Real silence. Not the holding your breath kind, the resting kind. Therapy became a weekly ritual, a chair, a soft-voiced counselor who didn't ask why I stayed so long under other people's control because she knew cycles don't break in a day. She asked instead, what version of yourself did they convince you to carry, and who are you without their approval? I didn't always know the answers, but asking them built bridges inside me where walls once stood. Some sessions I talked until my throat felt raw. Some I sat and stared at my hands, learning how to sit with stillness, how to trust it. Healing can feel like unraveling and rebuilding at the same time. On base, I volunteered with younger soldiers in resilience workshops. Some were fresh out of high school, eyes wide, nerves raw. Some were on their second or third enlistment carrying burdens they never said out loud. I didn't tell them my story first. I listened to theirs. And when one soldier with shaking hands finally whispered that his family only called when they needed money, he blinked like he expected judgment. I simply nodded steady and said sometimes walking away is not abandonment. Sometimes it's survival. He exhaled like someone had handed him permission to breathe. I journaled in the evenings. Not pretty handwriting or poetic lines, just truth in ink. Sometimes only a sentence. Sometimes pages. Things like, I don't owe pain a place in my home, or I am allowed to love myself without earning it first, or they lost me. I did not lose them. Music filled the spaces that used to ache. Old country songs, soft R&B, military anthems that once made me feel alone, now made me feel proud. Pride is a quiet thing when it grows honestly, not fireworks. A candle. Steady. I bought a plant. A fern. I watered it like a promise. I hung my commendation in a simple black frame above my desk, not to stare at, but to remind the girl I had been that she grew into someone who defended herself as fiercely as she defended her country. Sometimes I walked by the courthouse where their hearing happened, never to watch, only to feel the gravity of choices. Their path and mine split there like two roads, one paved by entitlement and demand the other by dignity earned the hard way. They kept walking the one with walls closing in. I took the one with sky. I didn't celebrate their struggle. I didn't need to. Consequences speak more clearly than revenge ever could, and I no longer lived inside the echoes of their wants. On Sundays, I drove to the lake at Carver's Creek and sat by the water. The surface was always still in the morning, like a mirror waiting for confession. I didn't apologize to the reflection. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I offered gratitude to the woman staring back who survived loyalty she didn't owe and found strength she didn't know she had. Sometimes birds landed nearby. Hawks glided overhead. If peace had a sound, it was wings cutting air, water brushing reeds, breath that didn't tremble. One morning, as I sat there, breeze moving my hair lightly, I whispered a sentence that rose from somewhere deep, older than memory. Silence once protected them. Now silence protects me. Not the silence of swallowing pain. The silence of freedom. The silence of no longer being available to harm. The silence of choosing quiet joy over loud obligation. My life did not become perfect. Healing is not a straight line. Some nights memories scratched at the door. Shame tried to sneak in wearing old disguises. But shame loses power when you no longer carry someone else's story like it's your burden. I learned I could be fierce without being loud, soft without being small, alone without being lonely. I found family in soldiers who knew my worth without needing proof, in neighbors who waved from porches, in the barista who remembered my order and the gym buddy who spotted me on heavy lifts, and the elderly veteran who nodded every time he saw me, like he saw some reflection of his younger self in my posture. You build family in moments when someone chooses kindness instead of control. I had earned the right to build mine on purpose, and though the past still breathed somewhere far behind it, no longer followed me like a shadow waiting to reclaim me. It stayed where it belonged. Behind the gate, behind the courtroom door, behind the version of me that didn't know she had the right to leave. I didn't break a family. I walked away from one that broke itself, and I built a life instead. Mine. Whole, quiet, free. Have you ever carried your family's weight until it broke you? Tell me your city survivors find each other.